live dance. And hello, everybody. I am HP Holo / Edie Skye, depending upon which of my pen names you know me from. And I have a whole bunch of cool author friends, and I like to interview those author friends whenever they have new stuff coming out. So, welcome to the show. I guess I got to go through the usual podcast spiel. If you have any fun at all on this show, please like, subscribe, do all the podcasty things wherever you're watching. Also, I guess I should probably give my guest a chance to introduce herself. So on today, we have KACEY Ezell, who I believe is you're on the show for the first time talk about one of your books. You've been on some of my other stuff before as part of a big group, but welcome to your first book talk.
So, thank you. I'm very excited.
Finally. All right. So KACEY, tell us about yourself. Tell us the essentials of where we can find your books, and then we will talk about your latest release, Shadow Card Guardian. And
yes.
So let's get to it.
Okay. So hi, I'm KACEY Ezell. I write emotionally charged adventure, fantasy, and science fiction. And I'm stupidly proud of that tagline because I worked really hard on it.
I like it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm very genre fluid. I write all across the genres. My background is I'm an Air Force veteran. Was a helicopter pilot for 23 years. Flew a little on the civilian side doing EMS stuff too. So you get some. You can probably see some of that influence in a lot of my work. I think Edie / HP is one of like the coolest people I know, and I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you.
And it's not just because we both have blue hair. That was an accident.
Yes. Mine was actually supposed to be purple, but it started fading, and so it
looks so pretty now.
Oh yeah, it fades very nicely. I like it.
Yeah, it's
I can always tell how cool a person is going to be by whether their hair matches mine.
There's like a glove, right? It's like, hey, I see you.
Yes. Well, I was at a convention once, and I had a reader who said he was going to come find me, and I said, look for the purple hair. And then I looked around me and realized, I think you, Marisa Wolf, and Melissa Altoff, like all of us had purple hair. So I was like, look for the one with the purple hair and the obnoxious purple jacket. Like it was purple hair has ceased to be a good find me.
Yeah, it's funny because I did that too. I'm like, yeah, I'm the one with blue hair. Look for the blue hair.
I've had to switch it to look for the sunglasses because I have these really distinctive sunglasses now that I'll wear, and I rotate between a bunch. But
it works really well for like Uber Eats for me. Like, you know what I mean? But like, I'll be in the hotel lobby, find the purple or find the blue hair. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well,
yeah. Let's talk about books.
Yes, let's talk about books. So there's a lot behind Shadow Card Guardian.
Yeah.
So because it's your first self-published book, it's your first LitRPG. It's the first book you've written to Royal Road first. It's also part of John Stovall's Demon Card Enforcer universe. So there's a lot to talk about tonight.
Let's unpack, shall we?
Yeah. So first, what I want you to do, since it's part of another fictional universe, I want you to tell us what is the Demon Card Enforcer universe, and then I want you to tell us about Shadow Card Guardian and how it fits in, just for some full context for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So, Demon Card Enforcer is a deck building lit RPG story that features it features progression for the characters. If you speak, game lit or lit RPG, it features progression for the characters both in terms of the cards that they're able to get and add to their decks, but also in the characters' like levels and abilities and perks for themselves. Okay. Demon Card Enforcer was a book that introduced John Stovall's card world, which is the world that uses his deck building magic card system that functions kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, if you're familiar with that, in terms of, you use the cards to summon creatures that basically do magical battle on your behalf. And then some other things too, right? Like there's different enhancements and buildings and all kinds of things like that. But the basic premise of the story is that this is a polytheistic universe where the gods are just capricious, and they're constantly playing this thing called the Great Game. And in service to the Great Game, once every 10 years on New Year's Eve, the gods will choose random or not random people and gift them with a deck of 10 of these magic cards, and those people are called deck bearers. And these cards are not only magical, but they're incredibly valuable, like monetarily valuable, because they are so powerful, right? And so the premise of Demon Card Enforcer is that one of the people chosen on this most recent drop night, which is what that New Year's Eve when the cards are given is called, is a mob enforcer, and he's chosen by an infernal patron who would normally be considered evil, but his role ends up actually becoming kind of like the bad guy to hunt the other bad guys, right? It's such which is a full confession, that's a trope I absolutely love, right? That's one of my favorites. So what you end up getting is this really cool, very noir sort of like anti-hero storyline of this guy who knows he's a bad guy, but really in his soul, he wants to be a good guy, and he's trying to do the right thing, even though it means having to do the wrong thing a bunch of times over.
I love those kinds of characters too.
I love it. It's great. It's one of my favorite things. And so it's written by John Stovall, who I think have you had Shammy and John on the channel before?
I've had Shammy on before, yeah.
Yeah. So Shammy's a great friend of mine, and I actually was introduced to, well, and yours too. We're all friends.
I literally had Shammy on like 2 days ago.
She's amazing. I love her so much. But the whole reason I found it is because Shammy and I were talking about serialized fiction, and she was telling me about this site called Railroad, and I asked her for examples. She was like, my husband publishes on Railroad, and he does really well. And I was like, well, can you give me some examples of some good fiction on there? Because one of the things about Railroad that I found really interesting is that there are authors who essentially use it almost to crowdsource editing. And so, and there's a lot of them, which, no shade, that's great. But I didn't want to be a crowdsourced editor. I wanted to read, something that I was going to enjoy. So I asked her for some recommendations. And then I said, and what's your husband's fiction called? And she told me about it. And I read his first. I actually liked his story better than the other story she recommended. Before remain nameless, because I don't want to be that guy. But I fell in love with this story. And I read the first 2 books on Railroad, and then loved it so much I joined John's Patreon because I had to continue reading the story through book 3, which he's just finished and published. And rumor has it eventually, maybe someday, there might be a book 4. We'll see. But like the whole time I was, corresponding with Shammy and John and just being like, this is amazing. I freaking love this. And so I texted him at one point and I was like, hey, if you ever wanted like a special guest star, short story or something, let me know. Cause I'm really fascinated by this. And he was like, do you want to write something in my world? I was like, yes, please. That would be amazing. Thank you so much. So I worked with John extensively because not only did he create the setting and the universe, but he also created the card system and the magic system. And as a first-time LitRPG author and a pretty new LitRPG reader, I was not prepared to do that on my own. I definitely
I know that feeling.
to hold my hand because there are stats and there are cards and there are levels, and I was like, this is not something that I am used to including in my narrative, right? And the other thing too is that my publishing background has mostly been in military science fiction and alternate history. I'm branching off into fantasy as well. But LitRPG, it has its own, like all genres, has its own distinct audience. But the LitRPG is very there are a lot of differences between what LitRPG audiences look for versus like traditional fantasy audiences look for.
LitRPG audiences are one of the things I found since getting into LitRPG, both as a reader and a writer. They're often the writing and publishing community is in some ways very separate from the rest of the community. Like it almost seems to have a sort of grassroots beginning.
Yes.
And I may just be making that up, but
no, I don't. I think you're right.
Yeah. And Richie's in the chat. Literally,
welcome, Richie.
You were gonna pop up, Richie. By the way, anyone else watching, feel free to put questions in the comments for KACEY. We've got fun going on. But speaking of comments, I forgot to put in my usual stuff. If you are interested in reading Shadow Card Guardian already, there's a link coming up. Go buy it. But also, if you want to try to win a signed copy, we have a form you can fill out, and that is also in the comments, and that is it's also in the show notes and whatnot. But yeah, we'll draw a random winner after the show, and you get a signed copy of Shadow Card Guardian. So if you want to read it immediately, go buy it. If you're okay with waiting a little bit, go do that. But
and I have something to say that I'm going to owe you like dessert for later as an apology, but because I did not run this by you ahead of time, but I also have a free audiobook download code to give away as well.
Ooh, so we can do that, dude. Let me. I'll find a moment to amend the form while you're talking, and then we will make that happen.
I'm so sorry to drop that on you. I absolutely owe you dessert.
If you want to try to go for the audiobook, just put it in one of the little fields, and I will enter you for the audiobook. And so yeah, that's how we're gonna handle it. So I'm actually not distracted from actually interviewing you, because otherwise you're just gonna have 30 seconds of me doing this at the screen.
Again, I'm sorry. I should have brought that up sooner. I meant to, but then you mentioned this, and I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to tell her. So you see how my brain operates, obviously.
We both have writer brain. We understand these things. I completely forgot where we were in the discussion. Have you actually told us what Shadow Card Guardian is about yet?
Well, we haven't quite got there. So
okay. All right. Continue.
So oh, thank you, Richie. Richie likes the audio. Cool. Yeah. Shadow Card Guardian is a spin-off, actually, that takes place at the same time as the first book of John Stovall's Demon Card Enforcer series, which, if you've read his whole series, gets maybe a little bit confusing, because one of his side characters that shows up in book 2 is actually in Shadow Card Guardian, and that seems like a continuity break, but it really isn't, because book 2 happens like a year later. So keep that in mind. But it's the story of a woman she's a combat military veteran and an ER nurse, so she's kind of a tough cookie. She's also raising her orphaned nephew, Jake, who's 14. The woman's name is Dania. She goes by Dani. And she comes home. Jake's birthday happens to also be on New Year's Eve. And she comes home after a late shift at the ER, ready to celebrate his birthday, apologizing for being late, and only to find that Jake actually is selected by one of these gods, in his case, the goddess of night and shadows, Nyx, to be a deck bearer, which it's definitely a good news, bad news situation, right? Because now, this little family that's struggling to make ends meet, now they have these incredibly valuable cards and a way of utilizing them to make money, with tournaments and stuff. But Jake's 14. And one way to get new cards is to kill another deck bearer and take their cards. So that paints a huge target on his back. And so the central question of the story is, what will Dani do, and is she capable of doing it to protect Jake? And the answer is, she'll do anything. She'll whatever it takes. So it's a pretty gritty story in its own right, but I like to think that it has no, I don't like to think this. I'm not gonna pretend a false modesty. This is absolutely true. Damn it. So it has a core of heart and love and humor to it that I'm really proud of. These characters they just showed up, and they grabbed me by the throat.
Oh, those are the best characters. I love those.
And I loved it so much. I wrote most of this book in about 5 weeks, because it was just so fast that, and it was funny because as I'm writing it, I'm sending the chapters to John being like, man, is this okay? Are you sure? Is it? And he's like, yeah, dude, keep it coming. But in addition to that, he was also advising me on the game mechanics piece of it, because, I immediately knew what the story was. I immediately knew who the characters were. It took me a little bit longer to wrap my head around the game mechanics. And that's because it was new to me, because the actual game system that John uses, I found to be so elegant and so just really simple in its foundation, which allows it to be used in so many cool, intricate ways when you start considering the ways that the cards interact with each other,
Mhm.
and the ways in which they enhance their deck bearers, and then you have multiple deck bearers on a team and the ways that they can enhance each other. It was a great experience, and I really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to read it myself. This is normally I try to read at least a little bit of an author's work before I have them on the show about that work. But I have to
but this
admit,
came out like yesterday.
I have specifically been putting off reading this and Demon Card Enforcer because I don't know if you know this about me, but I absolutely love all things trading card related. Like I am an addict. I love like I will collect games that I don't even play. And I love, there's just something about the shiny pieces of paper that just gets me. And I know, based on all the good things I've heard about this, I know that it's going to make me want to write a deck building lit RPG. And I already have so many series that I got to write. And so that is why I put off reading it.
It's funny because I saw, thank you, by the way, for doing this. I saw that you shared one of my social media posts saying, I haven't read it because I can't have an idea for a deck builder. And I don't know if you saw my comment to that, but it was basically like, in all caps, it was like, oh my God, let's collaborate on a deck builder with sexy men and beautiful women. Let's do it.
That would be the most epic collaboration.
Wouldn't that be fun? That would be so much fun.
Oh, we got more activity in the chat. Zeckler is here and says, this book hit my DVR as soon as I heard about it. Love DCE.
I hope you love it.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, DCE is so good.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to finally dive into it. And so yeah. So Dani is both a combat veteran and and has emergency room experience.
Correct.
A lot of that draws from you. How much of your work experience is in this character?
Well, so it's adjacent, right? So Dani was she was a medic when she was in the Army, and I was a helicopter pilot in the Air Force. So those are two very different things. The combat that she saw was on the ground, very in your face. At one point, minor, not really spoiler, but she has a flashback to her lieutenant basically getting shot on top of her as he's trying to pull her from a vehicle wreck. And my combat experience was not that up close and personal. I got shot at while I was in the air, and fortunately for me, I dodged and they missed. So, totally different experience. And then as far as like ER experience is concerned, once again, I'm not an ER nurse. But I was an EMS pilot for about a year, and I worked very closely with some really badass ER nurses. So I borrowed heavily from the nurses and medics that I flew with when I was working for Air Care Eagle down in Richmond, Virginia. Shout out, guys, love you. So anyway, but yeah, they were the medical crew members that I flew with, that I got the opportunity to flew with, they were, one of the things that impressed me so much about them was that, and I really tried to write this into Dani, is that, they had such a appreciation for the cool, like the good things in life, the things that made them happy. But they were really great at being like, okay, when it's time to do business, we do business, which is something that we also train in aviation, right? Like it's the whole work hard, play hard paradigm. And that's not unique to aviation. It's not unique to the military. It's not unique to first responders, but it is something that is common to those communities, right? And so you see that a lot in Dani's character, and you see her teaching Jake about it. You know?
Cool. And so let's talk about Jake, because it seems much like the blurbs and whatnot that I've seen mostly focus on Dani. But Jake has, like, he's an orphan, so I mean he's got a pretty traumatic past. What's his situation before he gets the cards, and how does he handle having this massive power handed to him?
So Jake is, at the opening of the story, Jake is just turning 14. Prior to the story, when he was about 12 years old, he lost his parents in a car accident. And went to live with his mom's sister, Dani, his aunt Dani. And so the kid is already, like you said, he's already survived some trauma. He's already built a little bit of resilience. I tried to write him as a intelligent, fun, pretty resilient 14-year-old kid who's still a 14-year-old kid, and needs the guidance and protection and love of his mother figure guardian that Dani becomes. One of the scenes that it's funny. I usually make myself cry at some point when I am writing my books, and when I do, and they go out into the world, I almost always have one of my readers be like, "You brat, you made me cry," which I'm like, yes, I did.
I'm crying. Like, I feel terrible when readers send me messages like that, but also it's like, yes.
Yeah, it's like, sorry, not sorry, man, because the whole point is to make you feel something,
Yeah,
right? And I'm glad it gives me joy that the things that resonated with me, that I'm able to convey those and make them resonate with my readers. It's not sadism, I promise. But in any case, there's this one particular scene where Dani and Jake end up having an experience in a dungeon, because there are also dungeons that generate in this world when on drop night. They end up having an experience in a dungeon that really opens a lot of old wounds and is traumatic for both of them. And at the end of it, they have they come back to the cabin where they're living, and you'll like this. I actually have Dani making grilled cheese.
I always appreciate a good grilled cheese reference.
So Dani handles her trauma a lot like me, in that, okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is okay, let's get safe. Let's make sure our physical needs are met, and then we'll start unpacking the emotional BS, right? And so they get safe. They're in the cabin. Everything's fine. Jake's there, and she's like, all right, he's 14. It's the middle of the night. Kid needs food, so she starts making some grilled cheese sandwiches, and she's talking to him, and he's like, he basically, at one point, I don't remember exactly how I started the conversation off the top of my head, but at one point he's like, how are you okay? And she said, or no, he starts to cry, and then he apologizes for crying. And she said, he says, I'm sorry that I'm crying like a baby. And she says, well, are you though? And he goes, what do you mean? She said, are you crying, hoping that someone will come along and solve your problems for you? Or are you acting like a man and a warrior and choosing a safe, secure place to deal with your emotions so they don't come back and bite you in the ass later? And I got so many comments from my railroad readers about that scene, about how important that scene was to them, because I actually, no kidding, addressed the question of mental health and addressed it as something that it is good to process and it is good to deal with. And I didn't do it in a way that was demeaning, particularly to men. Nobody's telling this kid to suck it up and be a man. And, in fact, the opposite is happening. Dani's telling him, look, you got to handle this stuff so that you can move on and continue to handle business, later on. And so that was a piece that got me, and then it got my readers, and I felt incredibly excited about all of that.
That's one of my favorite things that happens in LitRPG, though, because the thing about LitRPG is that it's ultimately generally escapist fantasy.
Yep.
But and it ultimately, like, the main characters ultimately, they win. They're the heroes and whatnot. But the ones that make the heroes sort of have to face very rough things in a genuine way and make them struggle through it, those are the ones that I tend to enjoy the most. And I have to admit, I've been surprised too, because I've received similar comments from readers about elements of Titan Mage, especially. And Titan Mage, like, I wrote Titan Mage as pure escapism. Like, I wasn't trying to write anything particularly profound whenever I wrote it. But there are a handful of characters who have had traumatic backgrounds. And, I put in certain scenes, partly because of my own experience or those of people around me. And they're very minor, very small scenes. But there are particular characters where I have so many readers thank me for writing those minor characters because of what those characters went through. And I'm really glad that some of those characters are actually getting their own series that I started writing this week. So
Yay! Oh my
yeah,
gosh, that's so
but,
exciting. I
but yeah,
totally have a guess, but I won't say it out loud. But
it's
I'm so excited.
but it's one of the most rewarding parts of writing
Yeah.
kind of fantasy, because you're definitely you're not only giving readers a safe place, a safe environment in which to read. In a lot of cases, you're giving them ways to help overcome things in a
Mm-hmm.
comfortable environment. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's a really cool thing about this genre. Like I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people condescend to it as pure escapism, but it's absolutely not when it's done well. And
Well, and there is value in escapism.
there
Let's
absolutely
not pretend otherwise, right?
is.
Like, yeah, I always go back to Shakespeare as an example, right? Like Shakespeare, yes, he was writing plays for Queen Elizabeth's court, and yes, he was writing plays for his noble patrons. But he was also writing plays for the groundlings who would pay a penny a pop to come and, you know, standing room only in the pit of the Globe Theater and enjoy, some bawdy humor on the stage as an escapist from their daily Elizabethan life.
Mhm.
That's the kind of stuff that endures, right? It's
Yep.
the stories that speak to us, and escapism is part of that.
Oh yeah.
Um, I would love to come back to this question of lit RPG, because the truth of the matter is, if I had a crystal ball right now, I would look in it and I would tell you that it tells me that lit RPG is genuinely going to be one of the driving forces of fiction and publishing moving forward,
Oh, I think
particularly
so too.
specifically genre fiction,
Oh yeah.
because there's, in part because of that escapist piece, but I also think that there's, one of the things that's great about living when we live is that we have so many different ways to get our escapism,
Mhm.
right? Like we get it through books, we get it through TV shows, we get it through movies, we get it through video games, we get it through tabletop card games, we get it through tabletop role playing games, all of the above, miniature games, right? um, but with the proliferation of gaming, video gaming, card gaming, all of that kind of stuff, for over the past like several decades, I really think that a lot of people have really become comfortable with experiencing story in that kind of format. And Gamelit as a whole, you've heard me talk about this before,
Oh
Gamelit as
yeah.
a whole echoes that structure. And so I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to, get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's kind of the wave of the future, which is exciting to me.
It really is. And
Yeah,
it's cool because it's the kind of genre that no one would have conceived of 50 years ago.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably more than 50 at this point. I forget when the first video games came out. I have no perception of time anyway. Like I still think 1990 was 10 years
No, you're
ago.
not wrong though.
It,
Like 50
yeah.
years ago, if you tried to sell a book that had stats on the page,
People would be like, what?
people would be like, no, you're breaking the narrative. Like you're going to completely throw your reader out. And that might be the case. It might have
Mhm.
been the case for those readers. But with readers who grew up with this game structure, like I'm talking about,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying that you can't enjoy lit RPG if you are not young. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I'm saying I think more people are enjoying it because we are comfortable with that structure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to admit that it took me some time to get used to it
Hmm.
when I first started reading it, because this is my deep dark lit RPG secret. I write lit RPG, but I don't actually
I
enjoy
know.
that much. My first game lit, I actually left out all the stats because whenever I read lit RPG, I mostly read for the video game vibe and logic. And it's like even
Yeah.
when I play video games or play tabletop RPGs, I don't pay all that much attention to my stats.
Yeah.
And I will, like, literally when I play games, I will play until the game gets really hard. And at that point, I'll be like, oh, I got all these skill points I can spend. What the heck? And
Yeah.
but it's just I don't. Jacob will try to explain how all the stats and math and whatnot work to me, and I just zone out. And so for my lit RPG, he writes my stats, I write
Uh-huh.
the story, and then he fixes the stats after the story is done to
Yeah.
make them match what I've written. It's
Right. That's
it's
funny because John and I had a very similar dynamic. I won't say that I skipped the cards entirely. I really liked reading about the cards, right? I loved reading about the different abilities that they had and, their relative power levels relative to one another. What I could not do was keep in my head the algorithm of which card defeated which, right? And
Yep.
John's system is it's very simple. But but I wasn't keeping track of that. Like I wasn't doing that mental math in my head as I was reading the story, and I wasn't doing it when I wrote it either. So I would have to go back and, hey Tony, I hope you enjoy it. I think you'll like it. Yeah, sorry, Tony's a longtime fan and reader of mine, so I wanted to shout him out real quick. But yeah, so that was, I had to have John come in and be like, okay, wait a minute, you can't do this right here. You can't play this card because you've way overspent your power, and kind of edit the story like that. But for me, the story comes first, right? Because that, I'm a reader and a writer before I'm a gamer, but that's not the case for everybody,
Yeah, it's same here. Story always comes first for me. Story comes first whenever I'm DMing. I mean, it's just
me too.
And so it's
it comes first when I'm role playing. Like I play most of my video gaming. I do almost all of it on story mode because I don't care. Like it's fun to do the combat, but I don't care about like, oh man, I want to get better than this, no.
Yeah.
I just want to feel the rush of destroying this thing and then moving on with the story.
I like feeling overpowered when I play video games. I like to wreck space and then go on.
Yeah. Let me walk in like a badass and just
Exactly.
my weapon down and be like, what's up?
Easy escape. Oh my gosh, we absolutely need to write a LitRPG together at some point.
We do.
Hilarious fun.
I'm telling you, cards and sexy men and women.
Yes, it's a perfect combination.
Let's do this.
All right, let's talk about now. You initially published to Royal Road, and this was the first time that you had done that. How was the experience of writing different when you're basically did you write it in real time and then like post it as you wrote it, or did you have it all finished beforehand, or how did it work?
No, I have way too much anxiety to do that. I wrote the entire thing from beginning to end. I had John edit it, and then I had another editor who John recommended that actually did the editing for DCE, edit it before I ever posted a single word on Railroad. And I structurally, what I did that was different was because I knew that I was going to post it on Railroad. John and I talked about a couple of things, and one of them was scene length. In my in my fantasy novel, Mage Light, my scenes can will be anywhere from 1,000 words to 3,000 words long.
Mm-hmm.
John was very specific. He was like, look. He's a very data-driven individual, which I love, right? He was like, all the evidence suggests that the optimal scene length is something between 1,700 and 2,200 words. So vary it up between there. Always end on a cliffhanger. That one actually came from Shammy. Always be Cliff in ABC, right?
Always be
which was not something that I'd ever like. I mean, I have ended scenes on cliffhangers before, right? And I've always tried to like include something to pull the reader through the narrative, but to deliberately set up each scene with a cliffhanger ending with the idea that, they're not going to be able to turn the page and read what happens next until, at, a couple of hours or tomorrow or next week, is like, that was a mental shift for me. So structurally, it affected the way that I wrote the novel, which was great. Honestly, it kind of made the experience sort of new and fresh, and was honestly probably part of the reason I wrote it so quickly, because it was like, oh, there's these digestible chunks. I just got to write 1,700 words today. So that was different about it. And then once I had it all written, because Drop Night is always on December 31st, we thought it would be fun to actually drop my story on Railroad on December 31st. And so that was the first day that I hit publish, was on December 31st of 2024. And John had, again, sort of a formula that he had discovered that worked well for really driving, views and engagement and getting the story onto the Rising Stars list of Railroad, which is one of the things that definitely, hey, Sherry, we were just talking about how much we liked you. So it was,
this earlier. We got Richie says that Demon Card Enforcer is one of his top 5 reads of last year. So love it. So everybody go read that, and also go read Shadow Card Guardian.
Yes.
RPG is 100% favorite genre.
No surprises there. None.
And Shammy also says Shadow Card Guardian was so good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. You're so good to me. But yes, so working with John, like John really did hold my hand through publishing on Railroad and telling me like, okay, on this day, drop this number of chapters. On this day, drop, and then set up your schedule. And I did that. Once I had gone through Shadow Card Guardian, like once I launched Shadow Card Guardian 1, I immediately started writing Shadow Card Guardian 2, which I got about halfway through, and then I got some contracts for my fantasy books, and so it's currently on pause. My paid subscribers on my website have seen like the first 15 chapters, and the first 15 chapters are up on Railroad, but I had to put it on hiatus because paying work comes first.
Yep.
And so but I'm excited to get back to it once this first contract book is turned in. I'm gonna go back, finish it up, and then we'll have it come out too. So yeah.
What would you say was the most challenging part of writing this book and the most fun?
Oh boy. The most fun was the characters. I freaking love these characters, and it surprised me which ones I actually really liked so much too, because there's a side character who's actually a card. He's a sentient card monster. His name is Hush, and he's the monster under the bed. Mm-hmm. And I initially wrote him thinking he would be, kind of like I didn't think he was going to be that important, but he just kept showing back up. So it's like, well, you're important, clearly. And it was funny because my Railroad readers, they liked him too. They started shipping him and Dani, and I was like, you guys, this is not a monster romance. That's a whole different thing. I mean, I can tell you where that lives on Amazon, but that's not
the next series.
That's right. So that was part of, again, the most fun part of it was the characters and their interactions, which is always my favorite part of writing anything. The hardest part for me probably was just adjusting to including the mechanics in the story, and trying to make it so that and it's funny because I kind of thought that if I was going to make a mistake with mechanics, that it was going to be that I had overpowered my characters, but the thing that John and that some of my readers even caught was they don't like it when you underpower the characters. They want OP characters too.
Oh, absolutely.
And to the point where, and you've talked about this before too, like they I love it when characters fail.
Yeah, like with I was working on Titan. I had just finished Titan Mage 2, and people were complaining that Locke wasn't God, and I'm like, no, he's got to grow.
Yeah. I had a person who was very kind. Don't get me wrong. Like this comment was very respectfully presented and everything, and it wasn't mean, but it kind of took me back a little bit because they were like, at a certain point, Dani had never wanted to be a deck bearer. Jake is a fan of like the deck bearer culture, and he follows the champions and all that kind of stuff. He's into it. He was super excited to get a deck. Dani only has a deck because she needs one to protect Jake, basically.
How does she get one?
She kills a deck bearer for it.
Ah.
So this guy came after her kid and she eliminated him. Turns out a syringe full of morphine to your carotid doesn't take that long. But yeah, so when you kill a deck bearer, you keep their cards. So Dani kept his cards for the sole purpose of protecting Jake, but she's not like, this was never a thing she wanted to do. And so she's real hesitant. Like she doesn't want to screw things up when it comes to like assigning levels and things like that. And when they're working through the dream dungeon that they go through, at one point she has like 3 unassigned levels, but she's not sure what to do with them. So she's like, I'm gonna wait and talk to Jake because he's my strategist. And I had a reader who was like, this is actually throwing me out of the story, man, because here's a combat veteran and she's not like using all of her available tools, like that would be like going into a firefight without an extra magazine.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, you think of it that way. And this is what I said to him. I was like, hey man, I'm sorry it's not working for you. Here's my thought process. You think of it that way, but Dani doesn't necessarily make that connection because this was not something she ever thought about. She's so new to this.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
she doesn't know what she's doing. There's a learning curve here for her.
I run into that a lot because I write isekai harem.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of the readers, like hyper competence is something that lit RPG readers and whatnot really value. Oh, Melanie's in the chat. Hey, Melanie.
Melanie's here.
Oh, another comment from Zeckler says, Shami is my favorite author who isn't. But yeah, there's a lot of self-insert and whatnot involved in isekai harem fantasy. And a lot of times the readers are older. We're talking older, we're 30 and above. And in the stuff I write, the main characters are usually in their 20s and also falling into a brand new world. And while I acknowledge that I'm writing fun escapism, so it's not like you don't expect fully realistic reactions, I like to have at least a little bit of reasonable realism there. And people who are falling into entirely new universes, if they're scared about it, they're going to be at least a little cautious.
A little disoriented, yeah.
and so I have Locke, he enjoys having his robot and whatnot, but he's also sort of still feeling his way around the world. And there were some readers who were like, he should be doing this, he should be doing that, he should effectively be acting like he's 40, even though and so there is that fun little that little quirk of the genre.
Yeah, for sure. Zek has another comment. He said, "Oh no, I'm turning into dust." I think he said older than the character.
Yeah. Well, I guess it strikes me as older because I used to work in young adult literature, and so I used to work in teen services, and so basically like people who are 30 have been old to me since forever. Like I'm older than 30 now, and I think I'm old. I'm not old, but it's
not old.
I don't know.
You're old.
It's a weird thing to think about, but anyway.
My kid's graduating from college in 2 weeks. Like, let's talk old, okay?
Oh my god, I can just feel myself aging.
Yeah,
right. Like the monsters too. So the monsters that are associated with these cards, is there a particular theme that runs through them? Like, are they based on mythological monsters? How's it work?
Yeah. So, the cards are gifted by a certain god or goddess, right? A deity. Small g, right? Like, this isn't intended to be a religious allegory or anything like that. But the cards that Jake gets are from the goddess of night and shadow. So John has in his system, he defined like certain types and energies that cards can be themed around. And so with Jake's cards, his are shadow and death themed. So the monsters that he has, and actually Jake doesn't have a lot of creatures, but like one of the monsters that he has is a shadow tainted goblin. So it's just this little goblin dude that runs around backstabbing things like a little rogue, right? Jake's character is this like shadow wielding assassin type, right? With a magical death attack that he can do. Dani, on the other hand, the deck bearer that she eliminated, and his purpose was he had a specialty deck that allowed him to basically sniff out other deck bearers that he could then attack and try to take their cards. And so he was hunting on drop night because he knew that this was going to happen. And so the deck that she ends up with, they are basically prehistoric megafauna. So she's got, some dire wolf trackers. She's got some scimitar cats. She's got a short-faced bear as one of her more powerful cards. It was a lot of fun to really kind of dig into that. And some of the non-creature like effect cards, we tried to make them all sort of match that theme, right? Dani's mantle, which is the like self-enhancement card that each deck bearer has to sort of buff themselves. Her mantle is based on a North American lion or a North American lioness. And it was one of my favorite cards because it was one of the first ones that I actually, really worked on with John instead of him saying, "Here's some cards. These will work. Choose from these." So yeah.
Got some more people in the comments. Tony says, "I like the idea of people being smart about their choices. I do the same when playing TTRPG." Oh, it's Anthony. Anthony says, "I turned 30 in May. Old. This is extra hilarious because Anthony used to be one of my teens that I worked with." So
that's amazing.
You're not allowed to feel old.
That is amazing. Oh,
welcome to the
That's like I just saw a whole bunch of like promotion announcements for people getting promoted to lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and these were like baby pilots that I taught right out of flight school when they were lieutenants, and they're all putting on 05. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness! I can just feel I can feel the wrinkles.
Yeah, I can feel the gray under all the blue.
Oh, Melanie's in the chat again and says the guy Rush I loved.
Oh yeah.
I like Beckler's approach to this. Says I almost have 10 years experience of being 30.
You're probably pretty good at being 30 then, my friend.
This is the approach I'm gonna take. Okay. Sorry I grew up. It sucks, but it happens. Oh my goodness.
So I'd love, if you don't mind, I'd love to talk a little bit about my audiobook.
Do it.
Yeah, because my audiobook narrator goes by the name of Anna Delphine, but it's actually Melanie Cordova under a stage name. So Mel actually did my audiobook, and I was so impressed with how well she performed all of these characters. I have a lot of characters, right? So there's Dani, and then she's also got to do this, adult woman's voice. Then she's got to do a 14-year-old boy's voice, and then she's got to do the monster under the bed's voice, which is basically like this like rasping whisper. She nailed it. It was amazing. So love the audiobook. And I really, really hope people check it out. Actually, quite a few people have, so I'm pretty happy with that.
I'm totally going to get the audiobook version now.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely should. I think it's probably the best way to experience it, honestly.
I have developed, I previously didn't listen to audiobooks all that much, but now I find that audiobooks provide really, really good background noise when I'm out in the garden or when I'm out doing chores and whatnot, and it makes me do chores longer, which is great. I have such a huge appreciation for audiobook narrators, solely because of the versatility they have to have. And it's really, really cool how the vocal range that really good audiobook narrators have. And
it's funny, she has a comment about it.
When I first read it, I was like, are you sure you want a female doing a 14-year-old boy?
Girl, you nailed the way Jake should sound. I loved it. You sounded like all of his inflections were spot on.
And honestly though, I think in terms of, if we're talking like voice work, I think there are a lot of women who will voice younger male characters precisely because of that higher tone of voice that young boys have. And Melanie says audiobooks are great for chores. Oh
yeah, they are. Yeah, chores and driving. That's the other time I listen to audiobooks is when I'm driving.
There was one period where I had to paint my bathroom, and I was looking forward to it solely because I knew how many audiobooks I was going to knock out while I did it.
That's a great idea. I should go listen to audiobooks, and I mean I don't have to paint my bathroom, but while I'm cleaning bathrooms.
You can always refresh it, like always change the color every now and then.
Yeah, I've lived here for 2 years. Sure, why not?
Man, this is almost the top of the hour already, and we're
I know, it's so much fun.
I'm going to have you on formally to talk about Mage Light when it comes out. But let's talk a little bit about it now because it's in that nice little pre-order period. And I'm going to put a little link in the comments here so that people can go ahead and pre-order it. But Mage Light is fantasy, but a very different fantasy than this. So give us a short little rundown about what Mage Light is.
So Mage Light is a traditional fantasy adventure where you have a sorceress who all her life has been told that she's not good enough and not powerful enough, and starts to believe it. And then basically on the night of her graduation from Magical Sorcerer College, she gets her heart broken and decides, you know what, F this, and she leaves, and gets herself into trouble, and then gets rescued by three very dangerous, very attractive men, and the best, right? And whom she then hires, because she's not dumb, she's just naive. She's like, you know what? I think I need some help. Why don't I hire you guys to take me home? And they agree to take her home. These three men who are basically sworn brothers. They grew up together, were separated for a long period of time, and then came back together to form this business. And one of them, during the time that they were apart, one of them was sold into a gladiatorial arena, and then got so good he earned his freedom, and then joined a mercenary company and became a mercenary for several years. The other one ended up in the Imperial Forestry Service, and got super good with the bow and with woodcraft and all this kind of stuff, but was always sort of ostracized because he wasn't a noble son like most of the foresters. And then the third one ended up on the streets of a large city and started pickpocketing and fell in with a thieves guild and became the top tier second story man in that city. But then they rejoined together and ended up, taking this contract to take this girl home. But then somebody locks them in the inn and sets the inn on fire. And so in order to save them all, she ends up working this magic that binds these three men to her. And now they have to figure out how to get her home, how or whether to break this binding, and who it is that's trying to kill her. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to this one. I remember you telling me about your idea for this one, like I want to say last year at MarsCon, and so now I'm totally to read it.
It's been in the works for a while. It is. It does have some. So it does have some why choose or reverse harem elements to it, but there is no sex on the page. It's really a story, thematically about choices and consent, and that actions have consequences. So it's a story of growing up and realizing that those things are true. And I think, if you like fantasy adventure, if you were paying attention, you may have realized that I've got a caster, a warrior, a ranger, and a rogue. So if you like the classic, tabletop fantasy role-playing game party structure, this is going to be right up your alley.
Yeah, I've got the e-arc for it right now. I'm reading Rise from Ruin. I'm reading Melissa's right now, and then I'm gonna get to Mage Light after that. Oh, it is so good. I gotta have her on too.
Oh, can we? Well,
I love everything involving.
I want to talk about Mage Light, but I really want to talk about Rise from Ruin. Can we talk about that? Oh,
I need to actually get the Romantasy podcast put together because I've been saying I'm gonna do that. Oh my gosh, so much stuff to talk about.
Yeah, Richie, we were talking about Mage Light for just a minute. Yeah, because it is available now for pre-order. So if you guys want to go check that out, you absolutely can.
And the e-arc is on Bane's website, right?
Yep.
So yeah, if you want to read it absolutely right now, you can get the e-arc there. And man, there's so much to read from you coming out.
Yeah. Well, and bonus, I think next month in May for launch, there's a free short story that's a prequel to Mage Light that's going to be on Bane.com as well. Yeah.
Richie says you guys are just making my TBR get bigger. That's what we do.
Yeah, welcome.
Melanie says, yes, feral for fantasy.
Feral for fantasy.
Accurate descriptor. Fantasy stuff coming out.
That's what we want, man. We want people to go feral for our fantasy. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us, you have any cons or anything coming up? We know you got a bunch of books coming up. So where are you going to be con-wise so people can get books signed by you?
So I'll be at LibertyCon in Chattanooga, Tennessee, third week in June. I will be at LitRPG Con in Denver in the middle of July. Are you going?
No, but I think it's cool that it exists.
I know. I'm so excited. I can't wait. I'm actually rooming with Melanie, so you guys can come see us both there. And then Dragon Con, which is my absolute favorite con of all time, Labor Day weekend in Atlanta, Georgia, and potentially one more, but I won't say because I'm not sure if it's going to work out, but maybe one more near the end of the year. So,
all right. Where can everybody find your stuff?
You can find me on, you can find me in the club. No, I am not 50 Cent. I am of that age, though. You can find me online at www.KACEYEZELL.net. That's my website. It's going to have links to all my books and everything. You can also search for me on Amazon. All my stuff is available there. Mage Light, you can find the e-art for that on Bane.com. You can find my alternate history novels that I wrote with Tom Kratman and Justin Watson, also on Bane.com. So yeah, go check it out, man.
Oh yeah, so you've got plenty of stuff to read. Everybody, go read Shadow Card Guardian. I also just put a whole bunch of links in the bottom of the chat where if you can enter to win a signed copy, there's the link to go buy it. There's also the link to, if you would like to support the podcast, you can go to Buy Me a Coffee or Ko-Fi and do that. Proceeds also go to feed my cat treats, because he's the only way we can keep him under control. But yeah, thank you for joining me tonight, KACEY. This was super, super fun.
This was so much fun.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Oh, Richie's in the chat again, says, the Chat and Stats crew will be making promos for authors and narrators there. Oh, at LitRPG. Oh, that's cool. And by the way, guys, if you haven't listened to Chat and Stats, you need to go find that podcast right now, because they're super, super fun. Richie and company, or Richie and Joel.
You want to go find that podcast. That does sound super fun.
I have been told that I've appeared on Chat and Stats so much that there are people who think I'm actually a host. But just Richie and Joel invite me on a lot, and it's a fun
that's awesome.
So I love going on over there. But yeah, everybody go check out Chat and Stats. They're super, super fun. But thank you, everyone, again for hanging out with us tonight. We had a really good crowd, really active chat tonight, and thank you, KACEY, again for joining me. We'll have your back.
Thank you for having me.
My tongue is getting all tied at this hour, but we are definitely going to have you back on for Mage Light and for that Romanticy podcast whenever I get there. But see you later.